Honestly, it means like everything. Like if I don't make art for a while, I start going a little crazy. I'll have dreams about it, and that's when I know, girl, you gotta get in that studio.
Hey guys, you're listening to Andreas Talks Art.
It's the wild, wild west out here, and I'm trying to hunt down all the artists on their creative pursuit. Art is this expression of human imagination that drives the process of introspection and contemplation that creates a limitless potential of creativity. And in the end, it's not about the art. It's about the mind and the soul that turn their imagination into a reality. So what does it mean to be an artist? And more importantly, what does art mean to you?
Yo, what is up, guys? We are back with another episode of Andreas Talks Art. Oh yeah, and today, I have a special guest for you guys. She's an American painter, a bookbinder, living in Colorado, and a fellow member of the Denver Art Society. And if you want to check out some of her work on Instagram, you can find her at Robinson_fine art. So let's sit down and talk some art with Kat Robinson. Do you remember when you first got into art?
I mean, I definitely was really young.
Yeah.
My sister was like an artist too, so she's more of a graphic designer now.
Okay.
And she was, I just kind of wanted to do what my sister did.
She was older?
Yeah, she was older. So everyone wants to, be their older sibling.
Yeah.
So I was probably making art at a much younger age than maybe I would have decided otherwise because of her. And then I feel like, I don't know when I decided to become a, quote, professional artist, but I do remember it had to have been middle school or early high school because I didn't look at any regular schools. I only looked at art schools. So I must have made that decision by sophomore year.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
pretty early.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
And I didn't even consider anything else. My parents were cool about it, so kudos to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your whole family's into art or creativity?
Well, so my sister is a visual artist, and then, my mom is like crafty.
Yeah.
And then my brother and my dad are programmers, so they're like whole other thing. The only other artist in the family is my mom's cousin is a medical illustrator. So she went to both art school and medical school.
Okay.
Yeah, and so she'll draw like organs and
Whoa.
all this stuff. Yeah. So I think she's like my third cousin. She's basically my aunt though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool.
But no one else.
What were you and your sister doing when you first got into art?
So she did a lot of watercolors.
Yeah.
And like drawing, and she used to like do a little like zine, which is us. I had two siblings, so I have an older brother and older sister.
Okay.
And she like made a zine. And then I remember once she had it in her mind that we could make a bed frame out of twigs, and I knew she was crazy, but she had us doing that for like a week.
It didn't work out.
No, it didn't. No.
Dang. Did you make like a cool sculpture at least or something, or it just end up getting...
No, she just kind of worked us as slave labor and had us like rubbing sticks down for a week.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So how did it transform from playing with sticks to wanting to be a professional artist in middle school?
I honestly, like, looking back, I don't even really know. I think I started getting really back into art in like 7th grade. And then I think people just were like, oh, well, that's like pretty good. And so I just kept doing it. And then I remember I was like, I was pretty good in school, but I was never good at math. And the only other thing that I was really interested in was science.
Yeah.
And you can only go so far in science without math. So I think I had a lot of ideas of what I wanted to do. Like I kind of wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a fashion designer. But in the end, I just ended up being a fine artist because for whatever reason, it's really hard for me to make work that someone else wants me to make. I want to make what I want to make. And if you have a creative career that's like in one of those subsets, then I think it would kill the joy of it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you studied fine art?
Yeah, so I got a bachelor's in fine arts from Chicago, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Sorry, I got to say that right. Such a mouthful. And they don't do majors. So you just get unless you're doing something like architecture, they will give you a BFA.
Yeah.
And that allows you to be very interdisciplinary, which they are like all about. They want you to be very conceptual in your work. So when I went there, I didn't really have sculpture classes in high school. So when I went there, I was a painter, and I took one painting class, and the teacher at one point was like, "Oh, I don't need to worry about you." And then I was like, why am I paying like a couple $1,000s for you to like just be like, oh, and like walk away? Yeah. So I never took a painting class again. And I started going in. I took some sculpture classes, and I took fiber classes. And then
you took what classes?
Fiber.
Fiber?
So they have a fiber and material studies.
Okay.
Department. So they'll have departments. They don't have majors, but they do have departments. And that department, everyone thought that we'd go there and like knit all day, but actually like we studied like theory and read like wild philosophical stuff.
Fiber theory?
All kinds of stuff.
Okay,
It was kind of a lot, because their whole thing is they want you to be intentional about the materials that you use in your work. So even though we're called like fiber, it's fiber and material studies. So yeah, a lot of us like weave and knit and do paper making, but you could make work out of any material there and take it in, and it was fine as long as you had a reason.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you use a burlap versus like a leather, you need to explain that.
So very conceptual.
Very conceptual. Yeah. We definitely had people wander into our department thinking they'd like chill and knit all day, and they were like, oh no. So I mainly stayed in the fiber department, mainly because then I was free to use any material I wanted, which I really liked. And then I took some classes in the printmaking department because I wanted to learn how to bind books and use a letterpress. So I was kind of all over the place.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was the whole school more so conceptual, or was it more skill-based, or a little bit of both?
Mostly conceptual.
Okay.
There were like maybe a few departments that would care more about skill.
Yeah.
But in general, they expected you to have the skills, and then they would have you like explain why you made what you made.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty brutal.
What did you take away from that, having to do that?
So much. I mean, I'd never made sculpture work before I went there, and I think, my work was pretty juvenile. They accepted me when I was a junior in high school. They kind of invited me to go there whenever I wanted, because they saw that I had there was reasons to what I was painting. But as soon as I got there, you take your first class and they're like, this is crap. And you're like, and, it's really hard. Lots of people, like, I think half of every freshman class drops out.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Because, they just want to make things because they're pretty, but that is not acceptable there at all. So, it definitely influenced me, because I think I probably would have just stayed with painting if I'd gone to another school like Pratt. Like Pratt was another big contender. But I couldn't find the joy in that. They just wanted you to be... There were other schools that were very technical that I just didn't even bother applying to, because it, that prepares you for like a great degree in illustration or something, but that doesn't appeal to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Very like narrow.
Yeah, which is fine, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I have so many other interests, and they very much encourage you to do other things outside of art to inspire your work.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's been like what I've done ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what allowed you to stay in the school and not give up when your work was getting critiqued, or what was that like?
I had so many other things going on in my life at the time that I honestly think I was like, I don't really care. Like, I have so much bigger fish to fry right now. Like, you crying over a critique is like, I'm just like, I have empathy, but I'd just be like, I don't really care. And I changed my work. And it made my work so much better. And they opened so many doors of like, because they didn't make you pick a major, I could take all those classes in all those other departments, and I use those skills still. So if I'd gone to another school, I probably would have been trapped in one thing, and I would have never been able to make the work that I make now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a biggest takeaway from going there? Or from going to art school?
I mean, I wouldn't suggest that everybody goes to art school. Like, you definitely don't need to go.
Yeah.
You know, like, when I say I have a BFA from the School of the Arts Institute of Chicago, like, people go, oh, but it's never, like, gotten me a job, you know?
Right.
It's like, it's good, but if you only have a BFA, it's not going to get you, like, a teaching career or anything. You really need a master's. So is it really worth it to go and get a bachelor's in fine art? Probably not. If you have it in you to do a master's, then I would say get a bachelor's in something that might get you a professional career, and then go and get a master's in fine art, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was like, I did waste a fair amount of time there doing, like, dumb stuff because I didn't know. I was 18, you know?
Right.
So I kind of wish I'd gone later in life, but, you know, I'm not unhappy about my decision.
You're glad you went?
I'm glad I went. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, after graduating, you didn't get a master's?
No.
No.
I was kind of wanting to be an art therapist, but, you know, life just got in the way, and I'm kind of glad I didn't go that route. But, I mean, immediately after graduating, I was like, well, I got to pay rent. So I just sort of wandered into a restaurant, and they hired me. And then I worked in restaurants for 10 years, and then COVID. So now I work for an eye doctor.
For what?
An eye doctor?
An eye doctor. Okay.
Yeah. So I check in patients and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So I do that, and I also do my art on the side. But I really, like, after I graduated, I don't think I really made work for, like, 2 years.
No.
I think I was burnt out, and had to work so much to, like, live. And then
Burnt out from working or from school?
both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 years after graduating from college, I always knew, I don't know, I got this idea when I was a freshman to move to Colorado when I was in school. I had a student that was with me for a class. She was one of the ones who dropped out, but she did these, like, landscape drawings, and she was, I think, from Colorado Springs, and they were, like, wild to me. I was like, this is awesome, and I loved her work so much. And then I was like, okay, I guess if you want to learn how to do landscapes, you should probably move to Colorado. And that seed was planted, and then 6 years later, you know, I saved up enough money, and I moved to Colorado, and that's when I started making work again. And I always wanted to learn how to paint landscapes, and the best teacher is nature and just, like, learning from observation.
Yeah.
So I started plein air painting. I didn't even know it had a name. I just was like, well, I feel like people go and paint on easels, like, outside, and, like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's called plein air painting.
Plein air painting, yeah. It's a French term. I didn't know it had a name, but so I started doing that, and, you know, and I got better, and, you know, you get better every time you do it. And so, like, last summer I was painting. I was going out and doing camping trips and doing 4 paintings in a camping trip and doing two a week because I wasn't working. So,
yeah,
you know, I improved so much. So if you want to learn how to do anything, you just have to do it from observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then all my painting outside started to influence my sculptural works. So I usually paint in the summer, and then I do my books in the winter.
Okay.
And my books are also about the landscape. I'm trying to see. So actually, this is kind of like the first books that I started making when I got to Colorado.
Yeah.
So I make the covers, I bind them, and the inside is actually an old book that
How do you make the covers?
So those are made out of wood. That's pretty simple. I just use a miter saw, cut them the same size, and drill some holes in there.
Okay.
I like you to see how I've made the book. I like it to be very, like, obvious how I've made it.
Right.
And I think that there's all this structure underneath a regular book that you don't see because they cover it, and I think that's a shame because I think it's beautiful. So I paint the edges of the book. You know the strata on I-70? Like when you're driving from Golden to Morrison and you see the cutout of all the rock?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to evoke that
All
along
the layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I call them timescapes because I find it so interesting that, like, a book holds a bunch of information, and so does that cut out on I-70.
Yeah.
You can see like the linea, and it can tell you all kinds of stuff. So I'm sort of trying to talk about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And like pre-literate and I guess non-literate cultures, because some cultures still do this, they have for millennia used the landscape as, it's called a mnemonic device.
Mnemonic device.
So a mnemonic device is a way that we remember things. So
Okay.
some people do the knuckle. I don't even know how this works, but they'll do the knuckles to tell them like how many days are in a month.
Okay.
Because like the little, I don't know, it works. People have shown me. And so it's just like a little trick to help you remember things. So in pre-literate cultures, and almost, it's hard to find a culture that didn't do this. They would use landscapes or things from the landscape to remember things. So let's say maybe it would usually be a shaman or a wise man would hold all this information, and he'd be like, I stand in this place and I look at this mountain, and then I remember all of our trade agreements with all of our neighboring.
Yeah.
Or like I look here and I remember someone's entire family tree, or I look here and I know like when you're supposed to plant this and harvest. So landscape's been used as a way to store information, both literally and figuratively, for human beings as long as we've been around, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would try to kind of speak to that and like ask people that, you know, it's also a sort of a respect thing. Like a lot of people are like, oh, like they don't like have a written language, especially in the past when we run into these cultures, we like, they don't have a written language, they're not like worthwhile, or they're not civilized. But it's a complete misunderstanding of like how that society functions.
Yeah. Different ways of like storing information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that information, like it's a device, it's information that's passed down, and then it's a device that helps you remember it. But when you killed all those people or, you know, ruin their culture, you've lost all that information. It's not like anyone can look at the mountain and be like, oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's knowledge that is taught, and then our brain just has this way of being able to store it if we look at things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what got you into bookbinding?
Oh man, I don't even know. It actually is the most popular class at my school.
Okay.
Bookbinding 101.
Yeah.
I think it's a desire that a lot of people have. I think we just have a fascination with books.
Yeah.
And, you know, artists are always wanting to make their own sketchbooks or maybe their own portfolios. So it was always like the number one class. And me and my friends were like so obsessed with it that she had to make a bookbinding 2 class. Which I think still exists, so, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that school also has a very large collection of artist books.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, because not everyone has one. So you can go to Chicago and you can make an appointment, and you can either have them just bring out a bunch of books for you, or you can go through their catalog and select what books you want to look at. So they have all kinds of books. Like, I have a book there, but they also have, like, a book by Yoko Ono, you know, World's Your Oyster, poetry books, artist books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So cool.
So you were saying you can bind a book with almost anything before we started recording.
Yeah. So I actually brought in this book that I found out of cassette tapes. So there's lots of different kinds of, they're called book structures. So they're just different ways of binding books. So I tend to go mainly with this kind, either variations on cord bindings or Coptic bindings.
And this has to do with binding the individual pages or the
Yeah.
covers or everything?
So it's sort of like the stitch types.
Okay.
So, and I can make a book out of any flat, hard object. But
Yeah.
I have a sketchbook that I made out of an old purse. Yeah, I've made books out of shells. Really, like
Out of shells?
Yeah, you bring me an object, I can probably make a book out of it.
You just have to be able to drill holes in it, or
Yep,
what?
basically, yeah. So if you have
Okay.
anything hard and you can put holes in it, you can do what's called a Coptic bound book, and you can do loads of variations on that. And if you have anything soft, I mean, you can just sew paper into it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've made a book out of? Or the most strange, or I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, honestly, probably this cassette tape book. It's not that weird, but I mean, I tend to just use wood. I like natural things, so I tend to use wood and leather, and, I'll make my own book cloth. So I tend to go the natural route, but I do like to show people that they can make books out of anything.
Yeah.
The purses is fun too, because then you're like, this was a purse, and people are like, what?
Does it still have like the handles on it? And you
Yeah, I might use the handles to turn it into a clip.
Okay.
And then the bottom of the bag will be the spine, and then the sides, the bigger sides, will be the covers, and then I'll cut out the other sides that are smaller, and then this one I just took the shoulder strap and I re-put it in there to clasp the book back together.
Nice.
Yeah. This is really great audio.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Ah.
So how do you start a bookbinding project? Do you find different materials that inspire you, or do you just have these ideas that you want to try, or how does it come about?
Yeah, so I tend to just collect old books, especially when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
So I tend to collect old books, and I'll start by, I'll even pull one of these out.
Oh, well, that comes out.
Yeah.
It's like a book snake.
Actually, I forgot. It's kind of glued in there. But yeah, so you can see it's like a snake.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll take an old book, and I'll just start rebinding it, and it's very meditative. I'll do this a lot even if I'm just sort of uninspired. I'll just start making these snakes and things will come. So I'll start making these snakes, or they're called book blocks technically. I'll make a book block out of an old book, and then I'll take this, and then I have tons of containers, or I even make containers, and then I have other both found objects, and I'll also cast metal objects to put in them too. And these, to me, some of the, I've made so many that, some are more lean towards one way than the other, but they're a lot of the ones that I make now. So that one over there. Go ahead and open it. So inside you'll find a book.
What is this?
That's called a bone clasp.
What?
Yeah.
Is that actually a bone?
Yep.
Whoa.
And so I made the box, and so you open it, and there's a book
Okay.
in there. And I find that's just a really satisfying size to hold for some reason.
It looks like a little door too. I like it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking like Door to Another World. And then I have this cast metal landscape here. And then kind of my thinking is you find the right place based off that cast to open the book, and then a portal opens, another world, or some sort of weird magical thing will happen.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
How did you make this?
So that's called a cold cast. So the work I make is so small, it was just not worth it to find a foundry to do a hot cast, which is the traditional way where you make a mold and then you pour hot metal into it and then you take it out. They were just so small, and at the time I was not living anywhere near a foundry. There's loads here, but in New York City there's none. So you can make a mix of metal powder and epoxy and pour it into a mold.
Okay.
And it's the same kind of thing, except it's cold. You can do it in your house.
That's cool.
Yeah. So cold casting. There's loads of YouTube videos about it.
And you made a how did you make the mold for it? What was that?
Yeah, so you can either sometimes I use clay. Sometimes I'll start with clay and then I'll pour, and then I'll make a mold of it out of silicone.
Okay.
And then I will take the clay out, and then I will pour wax in there. And then because wax is kind of hard to start from. It's okay, but it's easier if the wax is already sort of molded into something similar. Mm-hmm. And then I can either slice it and get different profiles by slicing the wax.
Yeah.
And then I'll take the wax. I'll make another silicone mold out of using the wax shape that I've made, which is final. And then I'll use that silicone mold to then pour in the epoxy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you trying to fill these books with anything? So these here are just...
There's no content, yeah.
No content. Well, there is some content.
There is content. Yeah. So when I started doing books, I'm not a writer, and I get really overwhelmed thinking about the content.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm do I have anything worthwhile to say? Maybe that's where it stemmed from. But it was more just I just wanted to make books, and I really didn't want to think about like writing them or anything. That's like too much for me.
Yeah.
So that's why, and also I was using the covers to make sketchbooks. So I had all these insides of books and I wasn't doing anything with them. So I just started binding them like this. But I was also kind of thinking about language and how language changes and like misinterpretations of old books and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because like, there's English and there's Old English. And you're like, how did this come from that?
So so that made you kind of...
I was kind of thinking like...
fearful of writing? Or...
like fearful of making my own content, but then as I was binding these books together, I mean, I'm probably justifying after the fact, like, why are you doing this? But I was thinking about like really old texts that the meanings of so many words in those texts has changed.
Right.
Or like texts that we have translated many, many times because language has changed so much. And at what point is it just gibberish? Like, when does it like not even remotely mean what it meant in the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, that happens to almost everything at a certain point.
Yeah, I think, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you even read books like from the 40s and you're like, what?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now with your art?
So I have the book hits at Denver Art Society. I need to get my paintings in there. I need to get them framed. But I was at Avalon like art festival in Boulder a couple months ago, and I'll probably do that again. And I don't know, I do get kind of precious about my plein air paintings, so they actually work for mnemonic devices for me too. Like when I look at a painting that I've done on site, I remember everything about the day. So I kind of feel like a hoarder, but I really need to get rid of a lot of them. And I'm getting better about doing that, so I'll probably be showing a lot at Denver Art Society. I feel like one of the bigger goals of most plein air painters is they make a plein air painting on site and they get the colors right and they get the mood right. Then they go into their studio and they make a much larger version, and that one they sell. And I just like hit a roadblock with that every time. So that's one of those things I'm trying to get through.
You've tried doing that?
Yeah, I've tried doing it. I'll get like 90% of the way there and I'm just like, I don't know. It never has the same feeling for me. But it's one of those things. It's also hard for me to paint big. I make everything small, but I would like to paint bigger, but that's definitely like my struggle right now.
Is it just easier to make it smaller? Is there a reason why you like making it small?
I don't know. Like my work has always been small, and it's kind of surprising how much harder it is to make something big. Like there's all these practical things where like I'm not used to using a brush this big, but also like when you get really big, you have to walk back away from your painting.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to be this close to a painting that's this big. So you have to remember to like walk away. And I think, I don't know, it's also just me like having anxiety about it for no reason, I guess harder when the things get bigger. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Totally different too. Like I'm sure if you only paint big paintings, doing something small would be...
Yeah, probably.
Be a challenge.
Oh, yeah. What am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah. One stroke and it's covered. So are you trying to sell your work, or is this more something you're doing for fun now?
The books, yeah.
You're trying to sell
them? Trying to sell the books for sure. Also, like, I do like getting them into collections.
Yeah.
So getting them into collections, getting them into group shows, that's kind of my goal with the books. And then with the paintings, I mean, it wasn't really even until last year that I thought that they were at the level where I wanted to sell them. Like, painting is hard, and landscape painting is really, really hard because it is pretty objective. I mean, there's some subjectiveness to it, but it is fairly objective. And there are a lot of landscape painters out there, and there's a lot of really good landscape painters. But the thing is, if you ever talk to any of them, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, my work used to look like crap. Like, everyone's does. It's practice. It's going out there and doing it. So, like, I really wanted to get myself to a level that I was, like, proud of my work and wanted to sell it. Yeah. And I've, like, just now kind of got to that point. I mean, it took years. So...
What do you think gave you that confidence to feel like you were at that point?
I think it was painting every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like last summer I was painting every day. And the level of improvement that I saw in my work was great. It was like finally I was coming up with work and being like, oh, that's what I wanted it to look like. you know, and being able to make bigger, bolder brush strokes and like not get so caught up in the details like in my older work. And so that's when I started feeling really good about it. I mean, I've also just like in the past few years, I've met so many other plein air painters living out in the West here again. And they're all so kind and encouraging. And they're like, just get out there. Like, your work's great. Like, stop being so hard on yourself. So, kudos to all of them. Love you guys.
Yeah, artists are the best.
Yeah, go to plein air festivals. Like, they're so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. Are they like just displaying their work there, or are they like in a location and actually painting?
So it's usually both. Like, so the Telluride one, I feel like a lot of them are kind of like this, and I felt super involved in that because I kept just running into painters. But they'll be there for a week and they'll paint like every day, and then on the weekend, it's usually the 4th of July weekend. 2020 was weird, but 4th of July weekend they will show their work. And it's all for sale, and it's really incredible. And they'll have competitions and they'll have prizes. So typically I feel like plein air festivals are like that, where you go there for a week or maybe less, paint on site for a few days, and then they hang up their work framed, ready to sell. Although I'm like, it is also usually wet. Like, unless they did it 3 days ago, it's probably a little wet, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, selling a wet painting.
I don't know if the people are like buying it really kind of know that it... I'm sure once they buy it, they're like, oh yeah, so don't have anything touch it for 3 days.
Just, leave it locked away. That's funny. So do you have any advice or tips for someone who's either looking to get into bookbinding or plein air painting? Like with
plein air painting, it's like, do it every day, do it all the time. Everyone's like, take bug spray, take sunscreen, don't wear sunglasses. I made that mistake. Everyone makes that mistake. You have to wear a brimmed hat, because when you're looking at sunglasses, it changes the tint. Yeah. So the painting will look great with your sunglasses on, and then you take them off, and you're like, oh, that's garbage. So, yeah, if you're plein air painting, don't wear your sunglasses.
You just have to sell sunglasses with the piece.
Yeah, well, I actually work for an eye doctor, and I'm like, is there something else I can wear? And he's like, probably. So we'll see. Yeah, that would be an expensive painting.
Yeah.
Like, it comes with Ray-Bans. So... yeah, that would be my plein air advice. Like, do it all the time. Do it every day. For bookbinding, like, there's so many resources online. There's so many YouTube videos that will get you started. There's some great books about bookbinding that you can read, which is so nerdy. Books about... all the books I have are about bookbinding and painting. So I'd say, like, do that. It can be difficult to source the materials. That's the main reason why I came up with the kits.
Yeah.
Was like, you have to buy usually in bulk, and like, what if you don't really like doing it,
Like, what materials is it that it's hard to find?
Bookboard can be kind of hard to find. The tools, it's like you can't, sometimes you can buy them all in one place, but when I'm sourcing for my kits, I'm buying from like 3 different places, because between shipping and like limitations on certain things.
Yeah.
So it's getting all the things. You can buy book kits I feel like I saw them in like Meinigers, and you can probably get them from Blick and stuff. So I'd say like either buy a kit from somewhere, because otherwise you're going to get really overwhelmed on a very technical website that has like a million things you don't need. Like Talas is a great website, TALAS. They're like the bookbinding supply for the States, and they're out of Brooklyn. But if you go to that website and you don't know what you're buying, your brain's going to explode, because they have everything. They have everything. So buy a kit. Like, don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll learn so much more after that. But in the beginning, it's going to be way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Before I ask you, where can people check out your work, take your bookbinding class?
Yeah. So I have 2 Instagrams. One is Robinson, Robin_Robinson _fine art. So that's my Instagram for most of my sculptural work and my paintings. And then I also have my company, which is called Make Books With Me, and that is my bookbinding kits. So there's an Instagram for that. There's a Facebook page for that. There's a YouTube channel for that. And you can contact me on any of those. There's also makebookswithme@gmail.com about purchasing any of my kits. you can purchase them at Denver Art Society, and they have there's loads of different colors. It's a good time. Go check it out. Buy some art from other people too. It's a good time.
Yeah.
And you can contact me at either of those Instagrams about my regular art, but I would say Robinson_fine art at Instagram, and then also RobinsonFineArt.com is my regular website.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You're all over the place.
I know. I feel like
awesome.
I have so many things going on.
It's cool. I mean, you have a lot of different interests, so
yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, too many.
As long as you're into them all, it's cool.
For sure.
Yeah. So, Kat, I'm wondering, what does art mean to you?
Honestly, it means everything. If I don't make art for a while, I start going a little crazy and I have dreams about it, and that's when I know, girl, you gotta get in that studio.
Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Andreas Talks Art. Don't forget to leave me a review. It helps me improve the show. And if you got anything out of this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with one of your friends. Until next time, yeah.
Share this with your friends if you liked it. And don't forget to be cool. Peace out.